Hey, what I want to do is send you this quick, maybe in some ways a summary video and some thoughts on as we kind of close out the topic of, kind of defining the differences between managers and leaders this week. And one of the pieces I'm going to do that with is there's a great set of quotes by a guy by the name of Warren Bennis, who is he's really regarded as a pioneer of kind of contemporary leadership studies that really, I think, did an exceptional job of kind of capturing this in a couple of key quotes, some of these differences. What I'd also encourage you, by the way, I've sent out a separate video and an announcement that you'll receive here that'll be opened up later on today for a guy by the name of John Cotter, a lead instructor and faculty member at Harvard, and is well known for both leadership and change management, kind of both education and concepts in his career. But in this particular quote that I'm referring back to by Warren Bennis, or set of quotes that helps to distinguish between managers and leaders, kind of listen to them for a moment, and I think you'll get a sense of what I mean and how I think he does such an effective job of capturing much of what many of you have shared in your thoughts and exchanges on the discussions about this concept. So, first, Warren says, the manager relies on control, the leader inspires trust. Kind of an interesting distinction, I think, right? Staying inside of control and tasks, which a manager is highly focused in on, while a leader is really doing all that they can do to establish this strong foundation of trust, which so many of you referenced, and which is so important to build from a leadership perspective and to create the inspiration and reasons why people want to follow you. Second point Warren Bennis makes is the manager has a short range view, the leader has a long range perspective. Many of you touched on this important concept, and you certainly found it in some of the articles and readings that, to a large degree, a big part of the difference between management and leadership is the concept of time. And oftentimes, managers focusing somewhat more on the short term versus leaders both feeling compelled to have the responsibility to look out and look bigger, as many of you referred to as kind of having the big picture. This concept of time and the time horizon upon which managers and leaders view the importance of what they do is really an important distinction. Another one from Warren Bennis is the manager asks how and when, the leader asks what and why. Boy, this power of asking the big question, right? To dig into why something is happening, or why change needs to be made, and anchoring that with why it matters to you, your customers, and your people. Such an essential difference in the way leaders approach important concepts as they collaborate and communicate with their people. Another important quote from Warren Bennis was, the manager has eyes always on the bottom line, the leader's eyes are often on the horizon, right? So this, again, in the short term, obviously we need to be focused on having reasonable return on investment and capital and returns to shareholders if you're a public company and so on. But the fact that the leader and the expectations from followers is that the leader is paying attention to what's out in front of them and out ahead, kind of eyes on the horizon versus staying too focused in the current and not making or thinking about the necessary changes in order for a company to avoid being disintermediated, as well as to assure the future viability of the company. Another quote, really simple one, is the manager maintains, the leader originates, right? There's nothing wrong with it, and certainly it's important to maintain the process and orientation to what's helped you to be successful. Um, Up to a point, and here's where the leader really looks at originating thought or inspiring others to originate thought, to address needed changes, and to challenge the status quo, right? Which really takes me to my next point that Warren makes, which is the manager accepts the status quo, the leader challenges it, right? Oftentimes we get so focused as managers, which again is important in terms of from an execution and day-to-day a task and process control perspective. But at times we don't step away as managers and look at the processes in which we're engaging in, challenge that maybe there's a different perspective or way to do this to be more productive, to achieve a better result. So so leaders oftentimes really need to kind of look at um, not accepting the status quo and challenging the status quo to determine and inspire people to look past what they're doing today and finding that there are oftentimes opportunities to improve disciplines, processes, ways we do things by just revisiting them again because each and every day things change that may cause something that looked and was great in terms of how we processed it previously to now we need to do more differently because of the emergence of new things, new ideas, new perspectives, new ways to accomplish things. Another one of the last two quotes I really like is, "The manager is a classic good soldier. Leaders are their own people." Now, I think what he means by this, as I've read other parts of some works by him, is not so much just that the leader's independent, but they're you often all of you often referred to this concept of being authentic, right? The ability for for leaders to be their own people, to have a level of humility yet self-confidence about themselves, having a good self-awareness and understanding about how others experience them. They are their own people. They're willing to, as we said earlier, challenge the status quo and have confidence in doing such because they're also at the same time taking the temperature of their people and organization through feedback and added self-awareness that helps them to be their own people, right? And to gain from theirs and others' experience. And the last one, I may have mentioned in one of the discussions. If I hadn't, I think it's just a very kind of good closing point. Is around the concept of the quote that he makes, that Warren makes, which is, the manager does the right thing. Excuse me, let me back up. The manager does things right. The leader does the right thing. Right. This is again back to the concept of focusing in on current processes, executing based upon our understanding of those, oftentimes very much what managers and their teams focus on. However, at times we can lose a sense of priority, right? We can be doing things right the way they've been designed and the way we're supposed to do them. However, there may be some things that we need to prioritize in advance of the things that we're quote unquote doing right in order to focus ourselves on the most important things and doing the right things, which is really what Warren's working hard to get across, which I think in his quote is just so valid. There's so many times we get so, I think at times as managers and people and organizations and even leaders at times where we get a little myopic and a little narrowly focused on just doing things right the way we've designed them, as opposed to figuring out if we need to step back, look at the big picture, and figure out what the right things, the priority of things we need to be putting our energies and emphasis and investment in today in order to have the kind of impact in the organization to address what our customers are looking for and to minimize the potential for becoming an also rand as a competitor in the markets in which we serve. So I thought those would be some really valuable kind of learning outcomes and kind of a way to summarize it with Warren's quotes to kind of summarize the concept and discussion we've been having around managers and leaders. I really appreciate all of your contributions. I think all of the discussions we've had around this, I think, helped all of us to begin to anchor a better understanding for all of us around these differences in defining management versus leadership. Because as we really want to understand what it is in order to be more effective as leaders, it's important, I think, to make that distinction. Thanks.